Good afternoon, everyone. The clock on my phone says it's 6 p.m. So since we have a full agenda, I'll go ahead and call the November 21st, 2019 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Viviana, would you please call the roll?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Pablo Serna.
Here.
Matt Lassen. Here. Debbie Moore.
Here.
Cynthia Meyer.
Here.
Glenn Johnson.
Here.
Ishmael Harris will be absent. Cheryl Lee.
Present. Thank you. We do have a quorum. We do have a number of items on the agenda, a number of public hearings. If you wish to be heard on any item on the agenda, you need to fill out a form with this lovely lady over here who just called the roll, and you'll be allowed 3 minutes to speak. So if you haven't done that, please do so. And she wants to tell me something.
Madam Chair, for the record, we would like it to reflect that Tom Dawson was also present for the meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you.
No, this is Greg Sherry.
Greg Sherry, yes. Tom
Greg
Dawson
Sherry.
has resigned. Greg Sherry. Okay. A lot going on in the planning department. And we also want to welcome our new planning director, Jared Mayfield. Today is his first day, and he gets to come to a planning and zoning meeting and to consider all of this good stuff. So, Jared, welcome. You're coming to a vibrant city with lots going on, and we welcome you and your expertise. Okay, item number 2 on the agenda, citizen comments. At this time, 3-minute comments will be taken from the audience on any topic not on the agenda. To address the commission, please submit a fully completed request card to the commission chairperson, that's me, prior to the beginning of the meeting. Do we have any person that wants to be heard on an item not on the agenda? If not, we will move on down the road. Item 3A. Consider action to approve minutes from the October 31, 2019 meeting of Planning and Zoning Commission. We've all had a chance to look at them. Are there any amendments, deletions, corrections?
The minutes did not reflect that Glenn Johnson and Ishmael Harris were present.
Okay. They will be corrected as such. Are there any other corrections? If not, I'll consider a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
The motion, is there a second?
One second. On the 31st meeting, it shows me being here, but I was not here.
Oh, okay. You're always such a presence, Greg. I mean, you know.
And when I'm here, they didn't recognize me.
Maybe we will now the amended minutes. Your motion will be the amended minutes?
Correct. Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 3B, consider action to approve the Bastrop Grove Section 2, Lot 6, final plat, being 1.194 acres out of the Nancy Blakey Survey, Abstract 98, located in the 600 block of West State Highway 71, as shown in Exhibit A within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas. Ms. Bills.
Good evening. So the request before you tonight is to approve a final plat for Bastrop Grove Section 1, Lot 6. It's just a one-lot plat. This is part of the Bastrop Grove preliminary plat, which was approved by City Council on August 8, 2017. You can see this is the location of the lot. It's right along the 71 frontage road. And then kind of behind it to the east is the new Seton Hospital. So this is a lot that'll be in front. There's 4 other additional lots that front 71 in front of the Seton Hospital. The zoning for this area is P5 Core, which is our commercial zoning. The final plat, you can see it's just one lot. It's a little over an acre in size. This is the second section, so it's the second final plat we've seen for the Bastrop Grove preliminary plat, one commercial lot. It will take access from a shared drive that accesses the 71 frontage road. The lot itself does not have any direct access. And then it takes its water and wastewater access from the available lines on 71. And there was a final drainage plan that was approved on October 31st, which then allowed them to forward on the final plat for approval. With our new B3 code, standard plats come before the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval. So you guys, after this, it does not go on to City Council. You guys get to approve the plat. The preliminary plat is still valid for this subdivision as long as you continue to file final plats in a sequence. The preliminary plat is still valid. And the recommendation on from staff is to approve the final plat. Any questions?
Any questions? Any concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the plat as is.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, ma'am. Item 3C. Consider action to approve with conditions Hunter subdivision lots 1A and 1B, a replat of Hunter subdivision lot 1 located at 2207 and 2209 Pecan Street within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, as shown in Exhibit A.
So for the request before you tonight is a replat of an existing lot within the Hunter subdivision, Lot 1. The original subdivision was recorded in 1996, so this will create 2 lots right along Pecan Street. There used to be one house there that was demolished several years ago, and they're planning to put 2 single-family structures there. The zoning for this area is P3, and I was mixing the old and the new. It's actually P3 neighborhood, not residential. The replat will create 2 equal lots of a little over half an acre in size. Our code defaults to the local government code, section 212. With 212, in the past, we were required to do notice in advance of the hearing. Recent amendments now allow us to do that notice after the plat has been approved. So within 15 days, we will notify all the neighbors within 200 feet of the replat. With the B3 code, part of our process now is to have the Development Review Committee, which is 6 staff members of the city review and collectively review and approve all the plans before they come before you all. With this one, there are 2 conditions that the DRC has recommended with this. One is to provide topo per item 15 on the plat checklist. As you remember, when you guys updated all the processes, the plat checklists were all adopted as part of the regulations and requirements. So the first is to provide the topographic information per the checklist, and then also to correct the signature block on the plat. So with those 2 conditions, if they will resubmit it, addressing those 2 things that can be approved if you all approve it tonight.
Mainly technical conditions.
Yes. So staff's recommendation is to consider action to approve this with the 2 conditions listed.
Are there any questions?
Yes, I have one. So the first condition that has come up with, first off, what, as far as on a plat versus, say, when they go to develop, like a development review and getting drainage correct and stuff like that, why on the plat versus just when they go to actually do construction to get the drainage right? And second off, if we're just checking a checklist, why do we need the information on the drainage?
So can y'all hear me, or is that? Can y'all hear me now? Okay.
There, now we can.
So we have debated this even as late as this afternoon on whether or not topo is going to be on the plat. And I think that we have ended where we will be taking this amendment back through the process and asking council to change that. And the topo will be a part of the preliminary review. and that will allow us to check for drainage, and we'll make sure that the floodways and the floodplains and the creeks are appropriately noted. But before it's finally plat, the topo will come off. So it will be as a part of checking the drainage requirements that meet our internal process without confusing the final plat. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay.
Any other?
I have a question. Can you go back to the site plan or the plat? Are those, the lines that are on there would appear to be setback, or is that correct?
Yes.
Are we still using setbacks in the new B3?
No, but this has been in process
Oh.
long before the
So
B3
moving
codes.
forward, are we going to be showing the different layers that we talked about and seeing that, where those first layers and?
I think the plan is just to refer to that, to say that the B3 code requirements are there. So if you change those setbacks in the future, that then they're not locked in on the plat.
And is that area that's kind of hatched in the front, are those a proposed driveway?
Yeah, so that's a joint access easement because the property owner wished to keep one driveway and share it. And so if they're going to share the driveway, then they both need to have access to it, so.
Okay.
Anyone else? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move to accept the staff recommendation.
Motion, is there a second?
Second that.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. We will move on now to our public hearings, and if you're following along, you are going to see some, as Linda says, some bifurcated jargon here, because when this was put together, the B3 had not been finally approved. So to go into the newspaper, you couldn't refer to the B3 because it wasn't actually enacted. So it had to refer back to the form-based codes. Now, if that's confusing enough, if it's not confusing enough, I'll go further. But in the future, what we will only be referring to is B3. And what we're going to be doing on all of these is hearing from the staff, then I will open a public hearing, and anyone who wishes to speak and has signed up with Ms. Viviana will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. So we will go on to item 3D.
All right, good evening, Commissioners.
Go for it.
All right, excellent. Okay, so our first item for the rezonings is to rezone Farms and Estates Lot 3, located at 1706 Farm Street. And their request is to change the zoning from P5 core to P4 mix. They currently have a duplex under construction, which was an allowed use under the previous zoning, but under the B3 codes, it would be a non-conforming use. So they are requesting to go to P4 mix to remain conforming.
And also, excuse me, we knew that when B3 was enacted, that there would be some folks that didn't quite fit where we had the majority of the different areas located. So rather than do overlays for this and another overlay for that, what we decided to do was take these cases on a case-by-case basis. That's why we have such a long agenda, when we promised that we're going to do our best not to do this in the future. But this is the first public hearings that we've had on these changes. So thanks to the staff for all their hard work. And is there anything else? Do we have any, are you done with your
We have a
presentation?
couple more slides
Okay.
if you
Sure.
would like to.
So you're close
Here's-
to 95 on this?
Yes, we are close to 95 on Farm Street. You can see here is 95, here's Farm Street, we're just a block off. The rezoning would actually make a nice transition between the residential houses that are further off of 95 and the 95 commercial district. And then we have our zoning map, so you can see the lot is currently zone P5, surrounding it is P4. It's very logical next to it. Future land use supports, and we have not received any public feedback to date, and we recommend approval. Any questions?
Are there any questions? And I'm flipping through here now. Do we have any comments opposed to this? I don't think I see any. Okay.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions? If not, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this matter? Please come forward and give us your name and address, please, sir.
I am Ronald Reynolds, known as Bo. I own the property around and connected to, I'm the one building the duplex.
Okay.
So I mostly was here in case y'all did have any questions why we agree with the transition. It makes the most sense. It means what we're building fits code. We seem to be that little dangle piece that's always there to help the city know, hey, there's that one exception to every rule. So
Yeah.
we just wanted to make sure that
We have quite a few exceptions going on tonight, so
Well,
you're just
I'm-
one of many.
I memorized the form-based code, and then suddenly we redid it. So
That's
it's kind
right.
of one of those like, oh,
Okay.
okay, well, what about this one? So we are in agreement to change it to make sure it stays with the same of what we're already building, and because we're building for family. We're building for my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law is already next door, and my son's going to live next door to that, and so
Good deal.
it really is just because it created a whatever.
The transition.
non-conforming
It's a good
there you go.
transition, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
If nothing else, I will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Make
I
a
have
motion.
one question. If we denied this, then he could come and seek a non-conforming use.
Well, he would be a
Exception.
legal non-conforming use.
Pardon?
He would be a legal non-conforming use. We've already permitted the structure, it's already, in process and construction. It would just be a matter of compliance were he to change anything.
Okay, thank you. I move to accept the recommendation to move from P5 to P4.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor? I'll say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 3E has been withdrawn, so we will go on to 3F.
Yes, ma'am. So 3F was a companion piece to 3E, but we have not heard from the property owner to formally withdraw this. Both pieces of property were for sale and were to be developed in conjunction with each other, and they have decided to no longer do that development. But since we have not heard from the applicant or from the property owners to withdraw, we're still going to present this and carry it forward. And it is in Tahitian Village, fronting East State Highway 71 and Industry Drive. Their request is to go from P5 core to P4 mix. There was a developer interested in constructing a fourplex community, and fourplexes are not an approved building type under the P5 core zoning. And so it's towards the entrance of Tahitian Village there on the frontage road. Currently, the entire strip is zoned P5 core, and then you have some other zonings within Tahitian Village. Future land use is for neighborhood commercial, which is your neighborhood scale commercial type developments. So while the proposed use wasn't commercial, it was house form and functionally would fit visually with the neighborhood. And we did not receive any feedback for that particular property either. And staff was recommending approval. But like I said, we expect this applicant to withdraw as well.
Are there any questions?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last sentence.
Oh, staff is expecting the property owner to withdraw the request. But they haven't done it yet, so we're still hearing it. We recommend
Do
approval.
we have the option to table this, or is there there's a deadline we've got to decide it, right?
No, we need to go ahead and since it has not been withdrawn, given the timetables, we need to go ahead and either vote it up or down.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah. So in a sea of P5, why would the city recommend going to P4 when, are we going to change everything to P4 along this line that comes forward?
No.
So we like P5.
So the existing buildings there, while they are commercial, they're all in house form. And so the visual character, the fourplexes would fit. You also, right across Industry Drive, even though they're also zone P4, you have a series of, or P5, a lot of those are duplexes, which are now legal non-conforming, and some smaller scale variety of uses and zonings. So we didn't feel like it would be too out of character with what's actually developed and planned to be developed in the area.
I will share with the commission what I would normally tell council. We get an opinion, but we don't vote. If you don't agree with it, sir, then y'all need to do different. From a staff perspective, it's a nice transition, but you wage absolutely the right question. If we take P5, which is our core, intended to be very fiscally sustainable, and we water it down every time somebody comes through the door, pretty soon it won't be. So the premise of this conversation was there were a number of people that when they got their like-for-like zoning, wanted something different. And so this is just the forum to do their request, which is different. Staff has looked at it, and we don't think it's that egregious, but you are absolutely right to ask that question.
That was my question as well, but on that, they can still do, I mean, everything in P4, they're just getting P5 is almost a bonus. I mean, they got more flexibility at a P5?
It depends on what you're looking to do. So you cannot do fourplexes, triplexes, duplexes. Those are not allowed under P5. P5 also requires additional building percentages when you're looking at the amount of lot that fronts the street. You have to fulfill more of your lot frontage with a building under P5 than P4.
Vice Chair, I think the point of P5 is to force density.
Okay.
And P4, the reason it lets the fourplex, that is a more dense product. So when we get to P5, it intentionally requires the density. The P5 example is Main Street, where we're sharing common walls, and it is intended to be a main street or a Burleson crossing, where shared walls, very dense, or there's some that are not quite as dense, but it really is the maximization of lot coverage to get the fiscal sustainability. And really, those areas have been targeted where it makes sense on 71 frontage, where commercial applications we would likely benefit from that. And I think that's why it was initially picked to be P5, because it was the 71 corridor.
Yes, and that was its like-to-like translation. Yeah.
Anything else? If not, then I will open public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we deny the request to go to P4.
Motion
Leave it
to
at P5.
deny. Motion to deny. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Would you please call the roll?
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
And if you vote in favor, you're voting to deny.
Correct. Cheryl Lee.
No.
Okay. So you're good. Cynthia Meyer.
No.
Matt Lassen.
Yes.
Debbie Moore.
No.
Pablo Serna.
Yes.
Glenn Johnson.
Yes.
Greg Sherry.
Yes.
I got 4 for and 3 against. Is that correct? Did I miss one? 4-3. It is denied. That's right, we have a big. Okay, thank you very much. Item 3G has been withdrawn. We'll move on to item 3H, public hearing and consider action to make a recommendation on rezoning .683 acres of Form Lot 37 east of Main Street from P3 neighborhood, previously Form-Based Code Neighborhood District, to P5 core located at 1302 State Highway 95 within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, and forward to the November 26, 2019 City Council meeting.
I don't believe y'all have met Allison Long. I was conversing with Jennifer. We've provided an opportunity with these 12 cases to give all of the planners an opportunity to present the case. And Allison Long has joined our team recently. We added in this last year's budget planning position, and she is helping us with all of our records retention. She's very instrumental in the building process, and she also functions in the planning. So she's getting practice at the entire development process. But y'all had not formally met Allison Long, so she will continue with the process.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Linda. All right, so I'll be presenting the next 4 cases that we have. So this one is at 95 and Farm Street, and they are requesting, so I'm actually going to go to the map first because this piece of property is a little tricky. And what you have to notice is this square is the lot, and it actually has 2 zonings on this lot. And so the property owner is actually just requesting that it has 1 single zoning. So now I'm going to back up a little bit. So they're requesting that half of their lot was commercial, P5, and half was P3 neighborhood. So they're just requesting that it's all P5. And right now it's vacant, but as you can see, it's right on 95. And so then if they were to get their request, it would all be P5. It is bisected by Gills Branch, and so previously that's why it had 2 types of zoning, but that doesn't necessarily make sense, so they're just wanting a single zoning. This is the future land map. It would all go to downtown Bastrop. And we have not received any responses for this piece of property, and staff is recommending to change it all to P5 core. Any questions? And the property owners are here too if you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
If it were not rezoned, there's no access to the other, there's no street on the backside of the lot, right?
Right now, correct.
Okay. So the only access is off of Highway 95?
Yes, and we
Thank
can.
you.
Okay.
Any other questions? If none, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion from the commission?
I make a motion for said property to be rezoned from P3 to P5.
Motion to approve. If there's a motion and a second. All, you want to say something?
Oh, no.
Okay. Let's call the roll.
Not a problem, Madam Chair. Cheryl Lee?
Yes.
Cynthia Meyer?
Yes.
Matt Lassen?
Yes.
Debbie Moore?
Yes.
Pablo Cerna?
Yes.
Glenn Johnson?
Yes.
Greg Sherry?
Affirmative.
All right.
Got to be one in every crowd. Thank you very much. Item is approved. We move on to 3I, public hearing and consider action to make a recommendation on rezoning .193 acres of building block 6 west of Water Street from P5 core, previously form-based code, downtown mixed-use district to P4 mix, located at 1110 Water Street within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, and forward to the November 26th City Council meeting. Ms. Allison.
All right, so this is a lot that is currently, the like-to-like was P5, but the property owner is requesting P4. Right now, it's a residential home, and so the rationale is that if it were P5, it would immediately become non-conforming. Here's the location of it. It is at Water and Farm, and it is surrounded on both sides by residential homes. But it is, it's close to downtown, but they are requesting the P4. Previously, it was downtown mixed use, so that would fit that P4. So this one lot would go to the P4, so it would be surrounded by P5 Here's the future land map. It would be downtown Bastrop. And for this one, we have had a few responses. We've had 2 for, 1 no objection. One of those 4s is the property owner, but staff is recommending approval.
Are there any questions?
I have a quick question. I'm looking at, is this the form-based code map? So it looks like it's actually, am I looking at the right spot? Is it neighborhood? It was zoned on the form-based code, the yellow?
So it's at Water and Farm. I believe it was
Yeah,
downtown
it's
mixed use.
Neighborhood.
Well, I know, so, I mean, I think I've got water and farm on here. Is that not where we're looking?
The map does show neighborhood. Maybe my notes are wrong. I'm pretty sure it was downtown mixed use, so that map might not be.
I feel like it was downtown mixed use. I was just confused by the map, I guess, for a second, but yeah.
Maybe
so,
that's a
but
outdated
so
version.
mixed use got translated to P5 in all the movements. I mean, it does. I mean, it just sounds originally like mixed use sounds more like P4 to me, I guess, because it's mixed housing and mixed commercial. It's kind of what it seems.
Maybe someone on the planning staff could clarify why something that was mixed use got translated to P5. Sorry, I'm a little new to the
That's quite
B3
all right.
process.
That's quite all right.
So we got the request for the map last minute, and we were trying to find the cleanest exhibit, and that was the one that was actually pulled from the study area. So I don't think that was that was not the last version that got adopted with the code. On our zoning map, it does show as downtown mixed use.
So I guess then why? I mean, I guess just why was mixed use P5? Because it sounds P5 sounds very commercial. Mixed use sounds very P4, I guess, just in my mind. But what was the rationale to move it all to P5 to begin with?
Because downtown mixed use did allow so Chestnut Street, all of this along here is actually zoned downtown mixed use. So it was meant for higher intensity commercial uses, but it also did allow some single family. With the new B3, the P5 doesn't allow single family.
I will echo what Jennifer is saying. When you look at some of the more commercial buildings in that area, they would fail the P4 test because they're not a house form. And I think that would be the distinction between mixed uses, P form and P5. And you've got some buildings along Water Street that are very much a commercial application. And if it were zoned P4, they would be non-conforming. So in order for them to exist, it had to be P5 because they're not house form.
So can I just ask you a question on this property? It is a house now, right? Because
It is.
Isn't it adjacent to the First Baptist Church? So there are houses all around. Okay.
Yeah, it's houses all around, but it could still be a commercial property with the P4 mix. Yeah.
Any other questions?
And it would be non-conforming as P5?
Correct.
Okay.
If there are no more questions, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and consider a motion.
I make a motion to recommend and accept their zoning, moving from P5 core to P4 mix.
Motion to approve the request. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Viv, would you call the roll, please?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Cheryl Lee,
Yes.
Cynthia Meyer,
Yes.
Matt Lassen,
Yes.
Debbie Moore,
Yes.
Pablo Serna,
Yes.
Glenn Johnson,
Yes.
Greg Sherry.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Item 3J, public hearing and consider action to make a recommendation on rezoning .129 acres of Building Block 6 west of Water Street from P5 Core, previously form-based code, downtown mixed-use district to P4 mix at 703 Farm Street within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, and forward to the November 26, 2019 City Council meeting.
All right, so this is a similar case. It's actually just 2 houses west of our previous one. And it's the same situation. It was zoned P5 under the building Bastrop process, but they are requesting P4. Additionally, this house is actually a state-recognized historic landmark. So to kind of support that P4 mix and maintain that house form, it kind of would help preserve that home in the future. We have had, so here's the location of it. So this house is actually surrounded by a couple of businesses. I believe it backs up to Bastrop Family Dental there to the left, and just south of it is the Music Academy. So this one is surrounded by a couple businesses, but also some residential homes. So this is where it shows P5, but they're requesting P4. Here's the future land use map. And so we have had some responses for this change. One of those is the property owner. And staff is recommending approval.
Are there any questions of staff?
Under P4, that this property could be, although it's a residence now, it could be a commercial establishment as long as the historical building had the form of a home.
Correct.
Thank you.
I'd like to know, just because I'm trying to picture that area and what's over there, what commercial buildings are over there now that makes that a P5? I'm trying to get a better understanding, because to me, that most of that area, the applicants are saying it's mixed right now, right? So I'm trying to understand why it was, like Matt asked earlier, a P5, because all I'm seeing are houses in my brain.
So, Commissioner, if you are at the corner of Farm and Main, I believe you've got the post office annex at that corner. The dental office is commercial and it's not a house form. Directly to the south of that, you've got the music building, that's the church and the music. You continue on and you've got churches and some institutional Southwestern Bell-looking buildings. So it's a very much a mixed bag in this area.
Back that way, though, it is, okay, not the houses that I'm seeing in my brain. Okay, I got it.
Any other questions?
No, I think these are really good examples of where everything doesn't fit one size. So I think it's a good thing on this consideration.
Great, thank you. I will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and consider a motion.
I move to accept the recommendation to move to P4 mix.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Would you call the roll, please?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Cheryl Lee,
Yes.
Cynthia Meyer,
Yes?
Matt Lassen,
Yes.
Debbie Moore,
Yes.
Pablo Cerna,
Yes.
Glenn Johnson, Greg Sherry.
Yes.
All right. Moving on down the road, item 3K. Public hearing and consider action to make a recommendation on rezoning .353 acres of building block 8 west of Water Street from PCS Civic Space, previously form-based code Historic Main Street District, to P5 Core located at 1028 Main Street within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, and forward to the November 26, 2019 City Council meeting.
All right, so this property is on Main Street. Currently, it is the Fellowship Hall for the Calvary Episcopal Church, and it faces Main Street. So under the form-based code, this was historic Main Street, which did provide for a lot of commercial uses. Under the B3 code, it got the civic space designation, but they are requesting P5. You can see right here, it's on the corner of Spring and Main, right in our downtown. Right now it's civic space, but they would want that P5, and so that would help Main Street. It would continue that P5 zoning all the way up Main Street. Here's the future land use, it would be downtown Bastrop. We've received some responses for this. 2 are for this. And staff is recommending approval.
Are there any questions?
I have a
I
question.
see a question.
So as everything else that was historic Main Street got rezoned as P5, why was this one specifically set? It's not the church itself, but it's, I know, owned by the church, but why?
Because it is owned by the church and currently used for church functions, it is civic space. And they are discussing future expansions that would free this space up, and it would put it back on the tax rolls, and at that point in time, it would be appropriate for P5. And I anticipate, and I'm guessing, that because they know this, now would be the time to do this free of charge, and it will help them with marketing. And it's easier to get P5 now and market that. It will be a pre-existing non-conforming use, but the church will be able to continue to be a church, whether it's P5 or civic space, but with a like for like. It was a church, and we called it a church.
Any other questions? If there are none, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve as written.
A motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Debbie, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Cheryl Lee,
Yes.
Cynthia Meyer,
Yes?
Matt Lassen,
Yes.
Debbie Moore,
Yes.
Pablo Cerna,
Yes.
Glenn Johnson,
Yes.
Greg Sherry.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 3L, public hearing and consider action to make a recommendation on rezoning .2067 acres of Form Lot 3 west of Main Street, located at 606 Cedar Street, from P3 neighborhood, previously form-based code, neighborhood district, to P4 mix within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, and forward to the November 26, 2019 City Council meeting.
So this item is to rezone the lot that is directly to the west of Tracy's Drive-In Grocery to P4 mix. The Tracy's Grocery lot is zoned P4 mix as it was previously neighborhood commercial in the previous codes. The lot has a accessory structure towards the back. You can kind of see it on there. And otherwise, it's kind of been used as informal parking over the years for the grocery store, and they would like to be able to incorporate it as part of their site in the future. The previous code was form-based code. It was actually neighborhood commercial. It's neighborhood for this, and it's neighborhood commercial for the neighboring properties. So this just puts them together. Future land use map has this as downtown Bastrop, which allows for a mix of uses. To date, we've received 2 responses for and 1 against on this, and I provided the additional ones. I think we only had 1 at the time of the staff report. And staff is recommending to rezone this to P4 mix.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question. I remember when we talked to Matt about parking in the past, he was pretty much world apart, and we don't really need a plan for parking. And I was looking at the applicant's purpose in reading it. Reason requested for place type. Why would I like to change my zoning? Employee parking. I'm just wanted to hear maybe, are we really encouraging that?
Well, so it has actually already been used as for parking. It's usually a couple cars on that lot. It's not a lot. One of the benefits of the B3 code is we do allow a variety of parking materials now, so it doesn't have to be an asphalt or concrete parking lot. He could continue with the grass. He could do there's some options he has for doing the parking in that area that wouldn't make it a giant parking lot. So.
Question on kind of that same subject. So being zone P3, since we're only really kind of regulating nuisance, if 1 or 2 cars are parked there, I don't think any of the neighbors would find that a nuisance, where if several cars or a lot of cars were overparked there, that it's next to a neighborhood, they could easily regulate that through nuisance, right, if it's P3?
Yes, but typically So there would be a parking lot. It would be a standalone parking lot is what you'd be considering that property, which you don't have a standalone parking lot in a residential district usually, or a neighborhood.
Oh, yeah,
district.
well, I completely agree, but more in the sense that no harm, no foul, as long as it's minor use, you know, a couple of cars, I don't see the neighborhood really having a problem, but having 20 cars parked in there, I could easily see the neighborhood having a huge issue with that, but if it was P4, they couldn't rate, because it's zoned that they can do that. Where if it's P3, they can still, if there's any
well, if it's still a nuisance, if it's still considered a nuisance, it'll still be something.
But if it's zoned a parking lot, they're using it as a parking lot, how on earth is that a nuisance?
Dr. Lassen, the only way it would be considered a nuisance is if they're considered junk vehicles. So they would have to meet the nuisance test of being inoperable, not being registered, flat tires. It would have to be considered an inoperable junk vehicle for code enforcement to enforce it as a nuisance.
So if it remains P3, they can still fill it with cars, and that's not a nuisance?
I believe that would be correct.
So they don't really need P4 in order to park cars there?
There's no nuisance.
Okay.
And right now, there's building materials there quite often, and just not much room for cars, quite frankly. So,
I'm remembering kind of this property being highlighted as, actually the grocery store, kind of it was kind of made an example of a neighborhood store and an appropriate scale. And I think the scale to me was kind of important. This lot behind it, I think would change for me and my idea of what I thought, you know, that intent was to keep it like that. That I'm not in favor of creating more parking spaces. I mean, that would be, that would be my thinking.
On that note, though, it is parking right now. I mean, the business is, so the grocery store is P4, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that his new?
The grocery store is
So
P4.
he just wants his parking lot to be, to mix with his sign,
and there is an
right?
accessory structure that he uses as storage for
Right.
the business as well.
Yeah,
so this
so
would
I-
allow him to incorporate into one kind of site.
Exactly. Just have it all in one placement, yeah.
And I guess my one is do it, but we would be blessed in that idea, essentially. And I guess explicitly saying in the request for employee parking is what I guess for me is kind of our idea about that store, at least my understanding of it, was, you know, it was a unique kind of special situation. It was a neighborhood store. And adding that much more parking, it's a pretty big lot for parking, in my opinion.
well, the whole thing
Are
would
we
not be
adding parking? Or are we just approving it for parking?
We're approving it for P4, so that's the
Right.
thing, is he could still use it as additional space for the store. He could
Right.
add on to the store.
So if we did P3, he couldn't really
Yeah, he
use it
couldn't
as
do that.
additional place for the, yeah.
But his request, and in his stated request, he just wrote employee parking was his reason today for requesting that P4.
And just as a side note, we don't regulate uses. So the conversation about what he's going to do with it doesn't matter under B3, as long as it's, whatever he does is not designated as a nuisance. And I think the accessory structure that he uses for the store, and you made some statement, I don't know if that's an intent to plat as one lot, but I think the issue is P4, whether it's parking or not, is that an acceptable use behind Tracy's grocery store? Whether it's parking, whether it is some kind of house use that fits the neighborhood, that's P4, because we don't regulate the use of the property under B3.
Yeah, I think we're focusing on the parking too much, and they may have just put parking on there because they thought they had to have a reason to request it, so they put parking. But I do, that store has been there, I'm 48 years old. I'm sure it was there before I was born, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
And so they have been a long-time business in that community. Never been any issues with that business. Very well loved in all of the city of Bastrop. I don't see the problem with changing it to a P4, because to them it was already a P4 until we came out with the codes.
And I think this is actually an example of what we want in our
Well,
neighborhoods.
Just a point of correction, I do believe it was zoned as neighborhood, and they're requesting a change. It's never been, the lot in question has never been zoned commercial in any way. It's always been a neighborhood lot.
Right, but I was
Tracy's
referring
on
to the
corner.
main structure.
I completely agree, and everyone loves Tracy's, the main structure on the corner. The question is, should they be allowed to increase the size and scale for a neighborhood if they're requesting the change, and yes, they used parking as an example, which you're right, may not be their intended use, but if this is sold to someone else down the road, it can all be used for any P4 use. We know from before when the city made the attempt to just rezone Main Street P4, we had a number of angry residents in this building asking us not to zone Main Street P4 because they liked the neighborhood character of it. And so, not that I'm necessarily, I love Tracy's and I'm not against it, but the neighborhood has asked us to limit the commercial use of that area already in this process. And, you know, I'm curious to know, because Tracy's, the grocery store, is one side of this property. There is a residential house on the other side of the property, which I do believe that individual is here when it comes to public comments that they can speak to us, but you know, they're the neighbor. And I think the owner of Tracy's grocery store also owns several of the other properties around as being adjacent neighbors and obviously in favor of the change because he owns most of the property around there. And so there are other people that don't own property that would probably have something to say about it as well, similar to the other residents on Main Street.
That's why we have public hearings, so we can hear from the neighbors.
And just to clarify, their current use under P3 is approved, or is it grandfathered, or what's the status now of their current?
It would be grandfathered. It's been there for a while.
Okay, so, but it's, if this vote will not change their ability to continue what they've been doing for the
Yes,
last
they can
48
continue
years
that.
or whatever.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
A point of clarification. So it's a P3 now, and they've been parking there, or using it maybe for some parking or whatever, right? So if we establish it that they cannot change it to a P4, would they still be able to use that on the, you know, somebody wants to park right there and they would not be out of compliance?
Yes, they can continue to use it as they have been.
He's a business owner that has two adjacent properties. He'd like them both to be zoned the same way.
I'd like to hear the comments, honestly, because I'm kind of on the fence.
Any other questions or comment? If not, I will open public hearing on this item. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? You filled out a court. Please come forward and identify yourself and give us your address.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Martin Conradi, and I am the homeowner of 602 Cedar Street. So I sit adjacent to the lot in question. My wife and I are very much against rezoning this to a P4. We believe that it should stay a P3. I can address a couple of things. First of all, we have a 10-year-old daughter. And if this is turned into a parking lot with 20 vehicles, you're already making an unsafe corner. Main and Cedar is very busy. You're making it more unsafe for the neighborhood. A zoning change like this should be consistent with the surrounding properties. And if you take a look at it right there, I mean, and again, like Dr. Lawson, we love Tracy's. Okay, my daughter loves going over there and getting an ice cream or candy. But the expansion of the business into the historical heart of downtown Bastrop, you really are. I mean, this is the house that juts up and against this. Our home is the Sarah Jane Organ House. She's one of the founders of Bastrop, the city of Bastrop, and to allow commercial encroachment into the historical neighborhood and the historical heart of Bastrop, I don't think it should be done. And so I would ask, my wife would ask, that this property remain zoned P3. Also, addressing the parking of vehicles there. We've lived there, we bought the house in December, last December, December 12th. There has been a couple of pickup trucks for about a grand total of about 3 hours parked on that property. So there is nobody who is actually frequenting the business parking in that area back there. Nobody. Thank you.
I'd like to ask you a question, sir, before you sit down. No, that's okay. That's quite okay. You're concerned that if the zoning is changed, that there will be more parking spaces there, more vehicles parked there, since you haven't seen many?
That would be a concern. But if you change it from P3 to P4, I mean, conceivably, there could be a line of dumpsters right up against my fence. There could be, and with a truck going in there, from my understanding of the zoning laws. The other concern with changing that, you are actually opening up commercial development, and so my question would be, all right, so if this domino falls, where's the next piece that's going to be rezoned? And that, you're opening the door to something that I don't think Bastrop wants. My wife and I specifically bought this home because it is a piece of history. We don't want more commercial development in this part of Bastrop. It's an established neighborhood, very well established neighborhood.
And it's zoned as such. This is one of those cases that is not your norm. That's why he's been allowed to request this zoning change, because it didn't quite fit the overlay. I mean, we don't have the overlay there. This is how it's zoned. And to say that it's opening the door for more commercial, I don't think that's the case here. But I do understand and appreciate your concerns.
It sure is opening my back door to it.
Sure. But I don't think you're going to see it up and down Cedar Street or the like. So that's the only comment I wanted to make.
I just have one question, because I can't remember. Is there a fence there separating Tracy's from your property now?
Yes.
Or is it wide open?
It's kind of an old, rickety wired fence.
That's your fence or Tracy's fence? Or
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I definitely understand your concern, especially with your daughter. That tears at my heart. But so safety would be a big issue for you,
it
definitely, whether you had a daughter or not, I'm sure, because of the extra traffic. However, as Madam Chair stated, it's already a P4. It's already a business.
Well, this
right?
lot
Tracy's
P3.
is. I'm referring to Tracy's. Tracy's
Yes,
is already
and most of the traffic and the parking is in the front of the store.
But we're not we would not be approving any introduction of commercial property, like all down that side of Main, because I live that way. So I don't feel also that we would be opening the door for that, although I understand your concern, because as Matt stated earlier, someone could buy it down the road and put something else on it. So I definitely see both sides of it, and I appreciate you speaking.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions for this gentleman? Thank you. Does anyone else wish to be heard on this item? If none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners? And we remember that we don't zone uses. We don't control uses. This is the zoning that we're considering.
I guess I have a kind of a fundamental question. The nature of Tracy's is a blessing to the area, just in general. And I know this, we're not talking about Tracy's, but we're talking expanding about Tracy's. and everyone loves it, and I think a little store like Tracy's should exist in every neighborhood. But I guess the question is even if there were a dotted Tracy in every neighborhood around, is the intention to expand that and create a commercial district, or is it to leave it as a neighborhood kind of service? You know, where it can provide the basic needs of people that are needed, or is the idea that, well, once one business gets a foothold, are we going to try to expand that and build another area of development or commercial use? You know, we really want to highlight downtown as our commercial use, I think, in general, but I guess that's the question. Are we love Tracy's and we want it, but do we need 4 Tracy's on that same corner? Does that just...
We'll consider that if it ever comes up. You know, this is something that is unique.
I agree it's unique, only in that he's requesting it, but Tracy's itself is the uniqueness of this situation, not this property. This property is in a neighborhood like everything else around it. Tracy's is the uniqueness, not everything next to it. And since there's no actual use, sure, I mean, if parking is the only desire, we've heard from the police chief that he can still park there and he's not diminished in use. And if down the road it should ever come that this individual, or he sells it, they have grander plans of something else, that is something that could be presented as well, in which the neighborhood actually can have a dialogue that, okay, we're going to build a shop for this and we want to put that there, rather than just saying, you know what, you can already park there, but let's zone it P4 so you can still park there, and then let's sell it to someone down the road and just see what they decide to use with it. And so, as we're not limiting any use for the property from what he currently has, you know, from the owner's standpoint, whether it's accepted or not, it doesn't change how he's going to use it. And so, since the neighbor has a concern, especially the next door neighbor, I don't personally see the reason why it's necessary at this point to rezone it, because I believe that Tracy's is the uniqueness of the area, not the lot next to Tracy's.
So what I'm going to bring up is our long conversations over this long year that we've been talking about all the new place types and the zoning, and let's think back on discussions we've had about the same issue. What if down the street, as we've discussed other uses that we would and would not allow, what if someone wants to have a beauty shop in their home down the street and they want a P4? And that's why we're taking things on an individual basis and not just blanketing everything. And I think it is an individual basis concern, but I don't think it's realistic to say in some neighborhoods they're not going to be P4 mixed uses.
And I also want us to remember that initially, our initial discussions were to make all of Main Street down past the tracks and through the woods, just right along Main Street, P4 mix. And there was public outcry about that, and we stopped that for this very reason. So I understand what Matt's saying. However, I don't, as it is right now with the discussions we've had and the citizen input, I don't see that happening because there was such an opposition to it when it was initially proposed. But then that still left us to decide what to do with Tracy's, and that's where we are now.
And for me, I think the way it was presented, Tracy's was kind of a unique situation. The florist, also non-conforming business use, I think those are great and we want those, but I don't think we want to, I think what makes them special is that they're kind of unique and they're not everywhere, as Matt was kind of alluded to. We're going to have them at every corner. It's not going to be very unique. You know, I think safety concerns are certainly an issue. I just think what we're doing, it's an empty lot right now. It could be a lot of things. We're not going to try to regulate use, I agree, but we would be saying as a commission, we're okay with expanding that idea that it could be anything, even a parking lot. And I say, well, if he's using it now and it's not going to be a problem, becomes a nuisance, the neighbors can deal with that. So that would be my reason. I'm not going to approve this.
Any other comments? If not, I will consider a motion.
I make a motion to accept the rezoning from P3 to P4 on this property.
Motion to accept, is there approve, I'm sorry, is there a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. Betty, would you call the roll, please?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Cheryl Lee,
Yes.
Cynthia Meyer,
Yes?
Matt Lassen,
No.
Debbie Moore,
Yes.
Pablo Cerna,
No.
Glenn Johnson,
No.
Greg Sherry.
No.
Motion fails.
Motion fails. Do we need a substitute motion, or just leave it as it fails? We don't need a substitute motion, right? Okay. Item 3M, public hearing and consider action to make a recommendation on rezoning .214 acres of Building Block 1 west of Water Street located at 701 Austin Street from P3 neighborhood, previously form-based code neighborhood district, to P4 mix within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, and forward to the November 26, 2019 City Council meeting.
So this request would also be, this is along the south part of Main Street. So this is across from the city parkland and the old museum. It's at the corner of Austin and Main. They're requesting an upzoning from the P3 neighborhood to P4 mix. Currently, there is a house there, and in the previous zoning, it was form-based code neighborhood. You can see the place types around it directly across the street, and to the south it is neighborhood, but then you go one more lot north and south and you hit P4. So this area is already kind of a mix within those two blocks. Future land use is downtown Bastrop for this area. The rezoning notices were sent to 14 people. So far we've had 1 for and 1 against. And the reason behind supporting this from the staff perspective is the location. It is on Main Street. That is, it connects from 71 up to the downtown. So this is on kind of the main thoroughfare of Main Street going into the downtown. And it would be P4 mix, so it would still have to be house form, but it would allow for some multifamily or commercial uses.
Any questions?
I mean, just looking at it, and I went and walked this neighborhood earlier today, but the house opens up onto Austin Street, correct? That's its address, not Main Street.
Yes.
And so, kind of the idea of having, you know, I get this is a bit more closely tied to downtown Main Street than maybe some other things, but it still doesn't necessarily front Main Street. I mean, it could if it were redesigned, or redeveloped, but. Correct.
Any other questions? If not, I'll open public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
I did have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Couldn't think
I
about
didn't.
it right away.
You got to move, Pablo. You got to move, man.
Well, I did have a question for Jennifer. So we have kind of situations here where we're showing, what was the thinking when the initial layout came? I see all the P4 around, P5 actually, P4 around it. Is that P5 at the very top?
Yeah, at the very, very top is
Yeah.
P5.
So I see a lot of density around there. What was the thinking of putting this swath of P3 in the middle like that? How did that originate?
Because the form-based code zoning on this was neighborhood. Under the previous form-based code, it was to the south. They had a live work and then downtown mixed use. So it was not downtown mixed use. I think it was live work bounded on both sides as kind of buffers from the highway and the downtown. Right. And so these were houses. So I think in the previous code they got left.
This is that like for like kind of
Yeah, it was like for
scenario.
like translation. Yeah.
I would say if you go back to when form-based code was put together, the commercial structure across from on Main Street kind of just up and over, which that newer development that I still don't think is necessarily being used, which didn't exist, correct?
The old museum?
No, there were some houses there, but as far as the existing in its current commercial-looking state, I mean, it was largely unused.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think it made a lot of sense, especially when form-based code was made you had to limit the commercial at some point. And this kind of turned back into residential, except for the Masonic Lodge, which was clearly down at the bottom and had a different use. And so I think since when this was rezoned, or at least when it was zoned in the form-based code, there was a definitely valid reason for putting, I think, P3, or residential, whatever they called it, a live work at the time. Whereas now, especially with the extension of the P5 on the other side of Main Street, it definitely kind of makes this more in the thick of the commercial conversation than it maybe previously once was.
What was it zoned in the form-based code?
A neighborhood.
Neighborhood district.
Neighborhood district, yeah.
Any other questions?
So since it faces Austin Street, east of Austin, is that, I know you've got a few properties shown, but is most of it P3 east of Austin, or the east side of Austin, rather?
Yes, it's neighborhood.
Continued?
Yeah, P3 down Austin.
Why does this property feel like it needs the change?
I think they were just, they're thinking of future uses as either, a multifamily, kind of apartment structure in the house, or just, I think they saw it as an opportunity with Main Street access there to potentially do some more commercial development.
In the statement from Ms. Trigg, she says, I would like for you to consider making these properties P4 rather than P3, which would, there's more than one property that she's requesting?
Well, she can only request for her property, and one of her neighbors had come in at some point and talked about potentially the neighbor to the south asking for rezoning, and then she never came back in to turn in the paperwork. So.
Okay.
Is it then the staff's recommendation to upzone it?
Yes.
And so that would be kind of a departure away, in a way, from how it was thought about initially with the form-based code?
Yes, but that was a number of years, a few years ago now. Development has continued. So that's some of the nature of zoning changes is, are we to that point where things need to stay where they are, or are they ready to move to that next step? So the property owner feels that at that location, that moving up to P4 still have to be in the house form, but it would allow a higher density and would require them actually to pull up to the street if they make any changes and some more intensive streetscaping.
Vice Chair, I think that I would say to you that you don't have to go far to encounter commercial uses. There's only one house that separates this request to the Masonic Lodge, and when you go up Austin Street, you've got
it's
Casa.
Let me make a clarification. It's not that I don't see that. I think anytime that this was master planned or thought about, and there was some intent, and I'm trying to understand that intent when I was going through the whole understanding of it from Matt and everyone else. The idea was, we're in the downtown area. They wanted more of a live work. So I'm kind of wondering why it was never thought about, and they just put this swath of residential on it. So they were kind of, it looks to me like they were protecting that neighborhood. But I'm just trying to understand the intent. What was the understanding of why they did that? That was my reasoning.
And I don't have an answer of what that intent was.
This is the building that was a law office?
I don't believe so. It's been a house.
The law office is on Water Street, one block up, catty corner to the courthouse.
On Water Street? I thought she was on. And I'm talking about Virginia Piper's office.
Oh, it is on the next corner, and I think it's now Home Health.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions?
Currently the homeowner has no intended use of the property other than just living in it.
Not that they've stated, no.
So I was going to say, I think that, it does make fairly decent sense to change it, but given the lack of intentions, I think that if they had an intended use where they needed a commercial outlet or a commercial zoning to do it, the board would be more than willing to listen. I guess the only concern I have right now about the property is just that it opens up to Austin Street. It actually fronts Austin Street, not Main Street. And it just, then we got the adjacent property, we go across the street, and where do we stop the edge on Austin Street as well?
Any other questions?
I'm just looking at the property owner's request and their statement, and I believe, well, from the statement, it's definite that she's saying since both sides of Main Street are P4 and P5, I think that's what she's considering is because of her property. Now, I do understand your statement, Matt, about it facing Austin, so I understand that too.
I'm just trying to be consistent, and I think what I'm looking for is from staff to kind of say, this is what, this was the plan. It would be a lot easier if it were kind of in some, in the form-based code as live work, and then, I don't know, that kind of lends itself
The live
to
work was to the north to the north, actually, to buffer from the downtown. So there was the kind of a gradation of in the form-based code in that area.
So you would say then, and I know the plan director just got on the job now, but I mean, what do you think about that? Are we going to go through all these lots one by one and eventually convert them all to P4?
It's a potential as people develop, but part of the benefit of the B3 code is you're still regulating the form. So the form for this area will still be residential structure-like structures. So you're still going to have that house form. You're still going to have a limited impervious cover, that's not a commercial form. So if those do convert over time to law offices or things that are already in that area, it'll just give them that ability to do that. And people may come in on that block later, but that's when they come in to do it one by one. So
as we heard a lot during the B3, the B3 discussions. If you can't see it, hear it, smell it, it's not a nuisance, do we care?
And Vice Chair, I'm still paying rent on the corner 3 houses down. And I would say to you that if it became P4, it would not change the integrity of the neighborhood because you can walk 2 or 3 properties either direction and you're going to encounter a commercial use. So I don't think that if you upzone this to P4, you're going to change the integrity of the neighborhood because it's, with the exception of the houses facing Austin Street, I think it's already there. It's a different scenario, I think, than the conversation you just had with Tracy's that is surrounded by solid P4, and Tracy's is the anomaly. I don't think that's what you have in this neighborhood, and having lived there for 3 years, everybody cohabitated, and if you walked any direction, you're going to incorporate housing, you're going to get commercial, you're going to get churches, and that's already there.
And that's why I was trying to get the understanding of why it wasn't done like that from the beginning, because it looks like it was being protected in some way.
And I was not here when the form-based code was adopted, so I don't know the intent for that block.
Well, just to speak to that just slightly, all the area that's P4 above this was live work, correct? Mm-hmm. And that was intended as that buffer area between residential, live work, and then more commercial intensive uses, on Main Street. And so just in the way we translated having fewer coding or fewer zoning categories, live work had to either fit as residential or it had to fit as P4. And it just happened to be that since you can't really have a business in residential, it had to be P4. So it was originally zoned not to have such a hard boundary, but actually have a soft transition. We just zoned that soft transition out of it, though.
And we're not zoning uses.
Yeah. So it's the form. Keep in mind these are the forms of what. So your only house form in your P3, you have house form and multifamily house form in P4.
Still, we've done form for so long. I mean, uses for so long. It's still keep repeating it. We'll get it. Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
Did you open the public hearing?
I had the public hearing, and nobody wanted to speak. We've had so many.
I make a motion to accept staff's recommendation to upzone from a P3 to P4 on this property.
Motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Yes, Madam Chair. Cheryl Lee.
Yes.
Cynthia Meyer.
Yes.
Matt Lassen.
No.
Debbie Moore.
Yes.
Pablo Cerna.
Yes.
Glenn Johnson.
No.
Greg Sherry.
No.
Motion carries. Item 3N, public hearing and consider action to make a recommendation on rezoning 1.866 acres of Bradford subdivision, Lot 2, fraction, located at 1903 Main Street from P3 neighborhood, previously single-family 7, to a P4 mix within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, and forward to the November 26, 2019 City Council meeting.
So this is another request to go from the P3 neighborhood to the P4 mix, and this is north on Main Street. So this property is right across the railroad tracks on Main Street, and says Hawthorne Street. Hawthorne starts and stops at different places and doesn't connect all the way through along the railroad tracks. This is a fairly large lot. It's 1.86 acres. There's currently one single-family home on the property. The property owner is requesting to go from the P3 to P4 for this area, and her stated desire at this point in life is to do a commercial kitchen that serves limited hours to serve healthy food options from the house. Future land use map does have, this is neighborhood residential, and it does support limited commercial uses that serve the neighborhood. 25 notices were sent out, four have come back for, 1 against, and we didn't have any no objections. Staff's reasoning and why you could rezone this to P4 is it is a larger lot. It would allow for some additional house form structure as to be used as a commercial use, and it is bounded by the railroad tracks to the south. So you've got that buffer naturally on that side of the property.
If she wants to have a takeout restaurant. Where's the closest restaurant to that area now? Is it, it's probably Papa's or?
Probably downtown.
Yeah, be able to be downtown.
Tracy's.
Restaurant.
Then what you're after.
So this, for me, kind of goes back to the whole Tracy's conversation, because now you would be opening up the door for P4, a business. And you said there's a limited likeness there now. Are you referring to the florist? What is on that strip now that you said would be considered?
So as you go up further north on Main Street, you have, the florist that's a non-conforming use. It's actually in the P3 zoning still. And as you go further north, there are some multifamily zone properties, multifamily uses to the north.
Not a business, though. The florist would be the only one that would be.
Yes.
Technically.
And then Tracy's to the south.
So this would be the same scenario, really, basically. I mean, you're adding this business, it is right there by the tracks. However, there are no sidewalks there, there's no parking there. Maybe their lot's big enough for parking. There's no parking along the street. That's going to bring congestion to that part of the neighborhood. Takeout, people going in and out. And again, there's no sidewalks. That's the main concern. So I'm interested to hear what's the difference.
I would think there's a significant difference between this and Tracy's in the extension of Tracy's was the extension of an already existing kind of icon that nobody would deny its value to the neighborhood. And this is taking that exact same idea, going further north and applying it to a different group of people who may not be able to get down to Tracy's. And I think it also highlights the difference between this and Tracy's in that Tracy's was asking for a use, a change based on a use that they already have the use of, whereas they are asking to build something, they're coming with an idea of a business that they want to run from a house form type place and serve the neighborhood. I think that they're coming with a plan, and it's something that I think the neighborhood would like.
In contrast to that, just to push back a little bit, Tracy's has been around a long time. I could see Tracy's eventually building out, which would be good for that piece of property they were asking for. So the same could be said about adding value to the neighborhood by Tracy's building out. This taking up the amount of space that it's taking up, I would definitely be concerned about traffic patterns and safety in that area.
So here's my big concern on this property, because I walk this Main Street all the time. I walk this property. I'm almost run over all the time when I walk Main Street. And there's not much room for parking either. So if I'm walking it and there's cars on the street, I'm out in the middle of the street with cars coming. So I see safety being a major concern down in this area for any mixed-use commercial in that area right there.
Right by the railroad tracks. And then we're talking right by the railroad tracks.
Well, before anything could be built, there would be a lot of considerations that would go into anything that they would bring forward. And parking would be, traffic would be another, drainage would be another. And once again, we're not zoning uses. I'm about to get it through my thick skull.
I
We're
agree.
not zoning uses.
I agree, we're not zoning uses. And I just go back to, there has to be some vision about what we're trying to do here and consistency about it, that the sea of P3 around it kind of, to me, says something about it, even though it's a large lot. We're going to get a lot of those large lots that can be subdivided and sold and those type of things. So
And during the B3 discussions, that there was, I remember that many people saying that they hoped that there would be a Tracy's on the north end. So people could have a store that they could get to. And this person wants to, we're not zoning, we're not controlling uses, but they want fresh vegetables and healthy foods. And the people on the north end don't all have cars. So.
And that's exactly why I think we need to have a vision, and I'm looking for that, because we can't craft a vision one lot at a time.
No,
if we do that, we're going to make mistakes. We need to see a bigger picture of this. So I would hope that the staff kind of, if you put us in a tough situation, I don't want to go against staff. I just want to know what the vision is.
Yeah, it would have to be in house form, and it would have, anything that's built there would have to be consistent with the neighborhood. And it's not like they can put up something that has flashing lights and, all that good stuff. It would have to fit with the character of the neighborhood.
Vice Chair, in response to your vision for that area, it's been discussed at the council level that in upcoming budgets, we would consider doing a small area study on the north end because everybody agrees that there needs to be some commercial services for that area, but where is the right answer? And the small area study would deal with the north end holistically and not one parcel at a time. To address the sidewalks, we have money budgeted to put in sidewalks as well as streetlights, and we've been waiting for this code to be adopted so that we could make sure that the installation of that infrastructure is done as a catalyst project to the code. So we'll be working on that in January, but I hear you loud and clear about a vision for the area, and council shares that, and in upcoming budgets, we will certainly make that a priority. And we don't have it today, but we hear you that needs to happen, and it's being discussed.
Well, if this is denied today, and this property owner comes back in the future and again requests that it be changed, will it cost them then?
Yes.
If the request was granted and it was P4, how is parking addressed in P4 for that lot?
So all the parking in all the different districts is addressed in the forms, so where it has to go. So in P3 and P4, parking has to go behind the second layer. So you have different setback build to requirements for the structures. They have to be, so close but not too far away, and then the parking has to be behind that layer. So you can't be in front of the primary structure. But we don't have any requirement for parking.
That's what I was going to say. Commissioner Mayor, in addition to not regulating uses, we don't regulate parking. And one of the things that council determined to address the drainage was the impervious cover and the ability to use non-traditional materials such as crushed granite. So that if this was a house form in a commercial use and the market suggested it needed to go back to house form, that could easily happen without it being so commercial. So the P4 was designed to let the market fluctuate between homes and commercial where appropriate, and not have a sea of commercial parking that prevented that from transitioning back.
Any other questions?
Not so much a question, but I guess rather a statement more for if we're done with the public hearing.
We haven't actually opened the public hearing on this one. Because I think there
I'll
are
say my
maybe some
comments
people
for
here
when
to.
we're just talking to each other.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this item? If you please, have you filled out a speaker's form? Yes. Okay, please come forward and identify yourself and give us your address, please, sir.
Joshua Gordon, 1911 Main Street. And what I'm about to say is kind of for this one and the next one. So, because I live basically in the middle between the next two. So, what they're proposing, we've talked to both the owners and stuff. My wife, us, some of the neighbors and stuff, we all think it would be a positive change. Like you said, there's no, other than Tracy's, there's no businesses up and down. And we're in favor of it. The only thing that concerns us is that when these changes are made, and Dr. Lassen has said this and a couple other people, that when we make these changes, we go from residential to commercial, then if it changes hands, we don't have any control over what these changes may be. Like this one is a small, selling fresh fruits and vegetables and stuff, which we need on North Main. The other one, the one coming up, is going to be a gardening venture, and I think both of those things would be positive for North Main, which is one of the reasons we live there. I've lived there for 10 years. It's definitely different. Demographics are different as opposed to downtown Bastrop. There's a lot more different income levels, races, that sort of thing, which I love. And we do need more commercial, but I think some of the neighbors up and down Main Street are just a little bit concerned that if it creates a domino effect of if we start changing all these things from residential to commercial, even though we may be completely in favor of the commercial now, that maybe there's a time statute, or if the property changes hands, then we can relook or reevaluate some of these changes. I think, I just wanted to, I'm not like a NIMBY person. I like to think of myself as like somebody that wants change and evolves with the neighborhood and stuff. I think just sometimes we get worried when we're making a decision based on the information that we know now, but for the future of things that we don't have any control over, and could, even right now, the decision may make the community better. There could be something down the road that may have a negative effect on North Main. But
that could be said for most anything.
And that's very true. And Ms. Humble, and North Main needs a lot of just overall work, exactly. And as far as safety and stuff, we've been pushing sidewalks for years, way before these ever come before your board. I've seen kids almost get hit on their bikes, walking, everything. So that needs to be a priority just in general for Parks and Rec Board, not for you guys, I guess. But
thanks.
Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on this item?
Carrie Fossler is the applicant. She's the property owner. So.
Good evening. I want to tell you my plan since I couldn't fit it all into that little spot. We have an underutilized side yard next to the railroad tracks, and we would like to build a small commercial kitchen with window service 1 hour per weekday, just 12 to 1 p.m., Monday through Friday. When the whistle blows, the food is served, and so it's called the Bastrop Whistle Stop. What is so unique about the Bastrop Whistle Stop is that we will feature local chefs from around the neighborhood, because in my time here, I've met many hidden chefs among us who would appreciate a stage to shine. Mamas and chefs, people who would never, ever, 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 ever want to open a restaurant. I commit to that. But they would appreciate a wider audience than their families. So therefore, our community is not able to enjoy this hidden talent among us because they have no stage to shine. So for me, this would do 3 things. It would give us more variety of food choices in Bastrop, more diversity and more ethnicities. It would add more services for our North End district, which was the original spirit of the proposed P4 mixed-use designation for all of Main Street, which was pulled in the final stages, mostly because of people on the historic side, not on the North End. I was very adamant pro for it. And then the community third, the community building effort. We plan on picnic tables so folks can eat lunch with their neighbors, get to know each other. It's kind of like National Night Out, which we rally so hard for once a year, but this is all day long in your front yard. Not all day long, for an hour. And then lastly, we know and love and respect all of our neighbors and would never want to irritate them. So we think this is a minimal nuisance and maximum contribution to the community.
Thank you. Yeah. Any questions?
I have a question for staff. What is the impervious, maximum impervious percentage allowed under P4?
60%.
Hold on, he's figuring.
I'm getting about 60,000 square feet on a 1.866 acre. Is that correct?
Yes, but keep in mind that they will have to do a site plan and drainage plan if they are adding more impervious cover and are going to do something of that scale.
Any other questions? Thank you. Does anyone else wish to be heard on this item? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion or any questions?
My concern, and nothing against, I think y'all have a great idea. I think it's great. My concern the other way would be, as the neighbor said, it's wonderful now as long as it's used for that, but you know, in a couple of years, 3, 10, 15, whatever, it's not going to be that anymore. It's P4, and we still have neighborhood all around. And maybe the P4 is not going to be as agreeable with the neighborhood. So it's just the concern of we have, as Pablo's been saying, we just really have no vision yet of how we're going to handle these situations. And it's, if we don't have a vision, it's not done fairly case by case. If we apply something here and we don't apply it here, I just think we need to have all considerations taken in for all requests that are parallel and equal.
I also think that there are more residential homes than just Main Street, the people that live on Main Street. You got homes and people that have been in those homes for 40 plus years in that neighborhood. And there was talk of what was going to happen to the north end of town. And there were going to be some town halls. We were going to talk to the citizens. And I think that that needs to take place because there are more people that live there than just the people on Main Street that this would impact. And I've been asking for a vision for that end of town for years. And I definitely want to get the sidewalks in, which is kind of what was talked about at first, is making it safe. Is a priority. And then I would like more people to say what they would like on that end of town.
Just to follow up on at least my thought process, would encourage landowner to participate if there is going to be some studies. I know that will be open to public participation. There's groups, there's neighborhood associations that can really organize and come in and really make their case known, how they feel about any development happening. We saw that really happen very well with the LC area lot. I don't know if that's the case everywhere. I mean, you mentioned that you have different types of people living there, maybe different understandings about what development is, and so without really understanding all of that in the big picture, it's just hard to say, let's just spot zone here and there, and that's what makes it hard for me to say, yeah.
Especially since there is going to be some planning going on as soon as January, according to the city manager. And the only downside is that the fee has to be paid, and if there was any way to waive that on a future consideration, if this proposed zoning makes sense after the study, I am concerned about that. I don't, that's the only downside I see. We're on the cusp of having neighborhood comments, studies, sidewalk construction, whatever. And this hadn't happened as soon as we want it to happen, but it's going to happen soon, and that would give us an idea of what the North Main area ought to look like. And I'm just concerned that as we spot zone, it skews the study a little bit, I think.
I just want to be clear on what I said, because sometimes what I think I said and what I actually said are two different things, so let me go back, make sure we're all clear. The sidewalks and the street lights, there is money in this year's budget, and we will start the implementation of that in January. To do a small area study for the North End Character District will require budgetary funds, and we will put it in for consideration in the next year, but it may be a couple of years given some other priorities, but we know it's important. Council's acknowledged that, so I don't want to leave the impression that in January we're going to start a North End study. We will start in January with the implementation of the sidewalks and the street lights in that area, but studying and creating a vision will require budgetary funding that's not currently in this year's budget.
And studying and visioning are usually not quickly accomplished.
Well, what I would like is, I mean, as the informal, what Pablo was talking about, is that the neighborhood, I'm kind of concerned that people get these notices and they don't respond. And so we don't have a clear understanding of, do they just ignore it, or are they not in favor, or are they whatever. And I would like to hear more about what the North Main residents want. And I might be changed by those comments, but right now I think this is spot zoning for a specific purpose that may or may not be conducive to the North Main plan, whatever it turns out to be.
There has been discussion, a lot of discussion about the need for services for commercial entities on the north side of town. To think that there hasn't been and neighbors haven't spoken up about what they wanted there is incorrect. And this is we're not regulating uses. And I think this is the first step to get these folks what they need. Just because it's rezoned doesn't mean she can just pop up and bring anything she wants there. There'll be a site plan, there'll be a lot of studies going on as to what she's going to be there. It's still going to have to be in house form. And as far as being worried about what's going to happen down the road, I could walk out of here and get hit by a car, you know? You don't know. And in this state of property rights, I think, if she meets, if you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't hear it, and it's not a nuisance, it meets the smell test. And she's trying to give the north side what they said they wanted. So, that's all I had to say.
Madam Chairman, and you're absolutely right, we don't know what's going to happen, but I do know if I live in a neighborhood, zone neighborhood, that it's going to be a neighborhood, and it's not going to be, that was my point, is the people around there, it's a neighborhood, so that was my problem with changing it in the neighborhood, is the people that live there are in a neighborhood, just like where Tracy's was.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Kind of just address a couple of the statements about vision and everything else in relation to this plot. I think that despite what's been said here today, I don't think anyone up here would argue that Tracy's is a blessing to Bastrop. And the idea of expanding it doesn't necessarily, I love the idea, I just don't necessarily think we need two Tracy's next to each other. But in terms of vision and the B3 code specifically, the way I've understood it was that we paid a company a lot of money to come in and study our downtown because we love our downtown. We think it's beautiful. And from what I can understand, what we got out of that study was that it was developed without a top-down vision. It was developed with a bottom-up vision. People had an idea of building something and they did it. Again, we can reference Tracy's again. Somebody had an idea of building a grocery store up there to service people, and everyone loves it. We love the idea of it. And so I think what's made Bastrop great is the fact that, and maybe it's because there's been a good old boy system in place, which is also causing us lots of problems right now, or there's just kind of people did what they did, but people kind of just did what they did, and the market decided if it was going to work or if it wasn't going to work. And you know, we look at cities around us that have had a very much a top-down vision about how to develop a neighborhood, and we're trying to develop a code, or we did develop a code and adopted it, that basically says we don't want that. And so I think that too much of this top-down trying to decide what a neighborhood needs to look like and then say, okay, you right there, you have to be this because that's where we think it needs to go. I think what's lacking from Tracy's proposal and even the proposal further south on Main Street that I was against, although it passed, was that there was an individual that lacked the passion to see this through, to actually make an idea work. And right now we have an individual that's wanting to do that in our city, and sure, it may fail, and it may be P4 and, you know, in perpetuity and go on, but at the same time, our code protects us in a certain sense that it has to be house form, and at least we have that to fall back on. You know, there may be something else there, but it's going to be house form, and the neighbor can at least address that. And we're talking about what does the neighborhood want. I see that we had 4 requests in favor of this change and 1 not in favor of this change. And I think it's great that we actually have a resident in our city that's wanting to do something. Granted, they could get the zoning change and it turns into nothing. But it's a good idea. I think it's something that's needed, and I think we got to throw a little bit of faith the way of people who are trying to put themselves out there, put their money. We talk about our code could easily be changed from P3 to P4 if somebody wants to do a business, but we all know if we don't like what they want to do because we don't like the use, we're going to say no. The way P3 is going to change to P4 is the lady's already doing hair in her house, and finally she kind of gets caught up with by the city or whoever it is, and she has to change to P4 in order to make it legit. And everyone's going to say, you know what, I like what she's doing there, and we're going to make it P4. And it's a very organic change. It's not a directed change. It's not a, hey, I want to buy 2 acres and zone it this so I can, build, put millions of dollars into it, but it's a homeowner that just wants to make something work out of their house. And I think this is the exact idea that the B3 codes were intended to promote.
But the North Main was developed from the bottom up, and it was developed as a residential neighborhood. And so,
but how can it be
the
developed
top
bottom up
down
if it's
would
zoned
be
residential?
to tell the residential neighborhood, we're now going to have commercial establishments in your neighborhood. That's the top down. Now, that's...
This is a homeowner at the bottom wanting to provide services to their neighbor. I see that as very organic, and if the city gets out of the way, I think it's something that would happen naturally if we weren't here.
So and I hear what you're saying. My understanding of the B3 and the whole time I was there, and is really expressed well with the graphics showing the transit. You come from a rural and it steps up till you get to the more dense areas. And so our city was really laid out like that. It looks very well, and you can see that in those maps. That's why I'm looking for a vision that that's why I was asking on that previous example, why did that get zoned like that? Because that's one of the most dense areas, that Austin Street. You can walk, like you said, within a block or two, and there's commercial businesses all around you. In this situation, you can walk with a block, you have to walk blocks to get to the nearest thing. So I really would want to see from the planning, what is that vision? Is it along Main Street? Well, let's see that. Let's talk about that. Let's develop that. I think the reason I use the word spot zone is because you make a compelling case. Matt, you made a great argument. I want to see that. I'm all for that too. I'm a small business owner myself. I just don't want to start affecting what may be a bigger vision down the road, because in my understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the transit, it goes from rural to dense, from P1 to P5. And so my understanding of that's why that is that way.
Yes. One of the things that's kind of different, though, about the north part of town is you don't have that kind of starting point for a commercial area. You don't have that higher density to start that gradation. So it's pretty much all residential when you go north. So that would be the only difference, kind of, that you don't have somewhere to kind of grow from right now. You'd have to start somewhere.
And if the people in the north end don't want this, they won't support it, and it won't fly. If it's granted, she builds it, maybe they will come, and it will be a success. The marketplace a lot of times decides what should be in a neighborhood and what shouldn't be.
I think we should get more input on what that is for this particular side of town, only because as many people that have said they would like some type of commercial, I can tell you there's probably 20 more than that don't. And I think that for this part of town has been neglected for years. And I think that if we're going to start making changes, more input from the town is needed. Because trust me, I've asked just as many people that have not come to these meetings or will not watch them on TV, do they want a Dollar General in the neighborhood? Do they want a new Tracy's? No. The answer is no. And these are longtime residents that have been there. I think that, and sometimes people don't know what they want. So people could say they want a Tracy's, so that Tracy's opens up on that north end of town, and then you have traffic problems and parking problems and people hanging out in the parking lot. And then they realize, okay, well, maybe we didn't want a store in my neighborhood. So I just think more input is needed, honestly. There's
Talking
no
about
solid plans for it.
About what people want and what people don't want. I remember overhearing a conversation one time. I'd been here probably, his family for generations, putting that traffic light at Main and Chestnut. We don't need another traffic light in town. We don't need that. But we got a traffic light and it was very well needed. And that's getting too big. Don't need that. But I have been in meetings for years, especially on form-based code and the North Side Form-Based Code Committee. And I have heard people, we need services. We need a place to eat. We need services. There's nothing I don't have a car. I can't walk all the way down I can't get to HEB. At least this lady is trying to bring some services there. It's going to be in the form of a home. It's going to be regulated. It's got to have a site plan. And if her product is not what Northside wants, they're not going to go there and frequent her business. And if she brings it back, she's going to have to pay to have it rezoned.
Okay, but let's go back to authentic Bastrop. Your authentic Bastrop is on the north end park. Those people, again, have been there forever. So when you talk about us keeping Bastrop authentic Bastrop, let's find out what they consider authentic Bastrop. Putting a store, and I actually think it's a great idea, I honestly do. I'm there with you, I'm behind you. I'd probably walk over there and buy something. I'm not saying, your idea is great, but what I'm saying is I don't think that we are taking into account the citizens on that end of town and what they want and what they don't want. Now, you can't make people come to the meetings. I get that. We could say we're going to do a town hall, everybody come down here on a Friday evening, and we'll be here till 10 o'clock to let y'all talk. That would be up to them to come and us to try to get them to come. But what I'm saying is, I don't think any changes should be made to that part of town, because nothing has been done to that part of town as far as infrastructure goes in years. Now we want to put in this sandwich shop or whatever it is that they want to do, and we're supposed to rejoice. That's not going to happen. You have too many people that have been living over there for too long that are more concerned about other important things than some type of walk-up sandwich shop.
Since we haven't heard from them, I don't know what they want.
I know. That's
Other
why,
than,
and that's why I'm
other
saying
than what
we
I have
should-
heard during form-based codes, and I heard them, and I heard them, and I heard them complain about not having any kind of services on the north side.
What services?
Like a restaurant or a place to buy food or anything, and even a bus stop at times.
A bus stop or lights, exactly. Those are things that people are wanting, the sidewalks, the bus stops, the lights. I live on that side of town. Nobody talks about a store. They talk about the drainage, they talk about safety, they talk about lighting. Nobody has ever talked to me about putting a store over there. And we don't have enough input. They don't have a solid plan. I just think that we need to leave it as a P3 and then do the town halls, try to get more input before we make a decision on it. That's my opinion. I'm done.
I agree with you that nothing's happened on the north side, and I just think that it sounds like we're going to continue to let nothing happen on the north side right now as it sits. And I think we got to start somewhere, and we got a committed resident that wants to do something that I think everyone here likes the idea, and the north's got to rally around something. Or not rally around it.
Is there any other discussion other than what we have talked about a lot? Any new ideas? If not, I will consider a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve as is.
A motion to approve. Is there a second? Second. Motion and a second. Vivi, would you call the roll, please?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Cheryl Lee.
No.
Cynthia Meyer.
No.
Matt Lassen.
Yes.
Debbie Moore.
Yes.
Pablo Cerna.
No?
Glenn Johnson.
No.
Greg Sherry.
Yes.
Motion fails.
Thanks for trying. Item O, public hearing and consider action to make a recommendation on rezoning .760 acres of Farm Lot 5 west of Main Street, located at 1910 Main Street, and 2.467 acres of Farm Lot 5 west of Main Street to the west of 1910 Main Street from P3 neighborhood, previously single-family 7, to P4 mix within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, and forward to the November 26, 2019 City Council meeting.
So this is also a request to go from P3 neighborhood to P4 mix. The stated reason for the change is to allow the property owner to do an urban farm and small-scale community sales. It would allow tour groups to come, school children to come and see the farm as well. This is actually two separate parcels. This one big lot, same property owner for both. There's a house at 1910 along Main Street. The property behind, it's almost 2.5 acres, is actually landlocked. It does not have any direct frontage onto a street, which leads to some development challenges. The previous zoning on this was single-family 7, which translated to the P3 neighborhood. You can see this whole block is P3, just across the street. There is multifamily, and then to the north there's also multifamily. Future land use for this area is neighborhood residential, which does allow for some small-scale commercial. For this one, we've had 5 responses for, 2 against, 1 with no objection, and then 1 provided some comments but didn't pick one of the 3 categories. And a lot of those were provided to you on the dais because they've come in since the report. Just to kind of note either direction on this discussion. This is an interesting track because since it is landlocked, there's going to be a lot of development considerations on how this can be developed. So if it was to follow the single family or, you know, the residential lots, well, it's not lot standards, but the intent of doing residential style development, you would have to get some kind of road access into there. And so that would require probably, you know, absorbing one of the lots, either 1910, be adding another road, or going off of the other street to try to get into that lot to be able to subdivide to do individual neighborhood homes. If it was rezoned to P4, it would allow them to do the urban farm as an extension of the 1910 property with structures that would serve a small-scale urban farm in that area. Or if it were to go to something else in P4, it would allow for some multifamily without having to try to carve that up into individual lots. But there are, like I said, a lot of development considerations on this. Fire access would be a main one. Trying to, if there's only one way in and out, there would be replatting that would have to go on to figure out how to get that lot direct road access. So it's an interesting situation. This is kind of a remnant tract of the original farm lot that just got left over after people subdivided around.
And this again is on the north end of town, right?
Yep, this is just a little bit, it's across the street and a little bit north of the last zoning.
Anyone have questions for staff before I open the public hearing?
I have a question regarding conditional use permits. Are we still doing that?
No.
So we're not doing conditional use permitting?
We don't have that in the B3 code, no.
So if someone had a more deliberate layout and plan, they could still rezone and come forward and do that process later?
So there is a process that if they want to do something different than the code allows, they can do a neighborhood regulating plan and come in with that. And if it doesn't match the B3 code, they can request of council to do something different than the code allows.
And they would have to go through planning and zoning and
yes.
drainage and street types and everything else? Okay.
Any other questions? If not, this is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this item?
Madam Chair, may I speak? I'm actually the new owner of that property.
Did you fill out a form?
No, ma'am, I
Could,
Usually don't make the property owners fill out forms.
I apologize. Commissioners, Madam Chair.
your name, sir, please?
David Barrow, 1910 Main Street. Thank you very much. I look forward to getting to know all of you. I'm going to be new to this community, so I consider you all new parts of my community, new neighbors and all that. For the last 10 years, I've been part of an urban farm in Austin, and I've seen how Austin has grown, and I'm actually having to leave because of that development. And so I'm looking for a new home, and I believe that this is a perfect spot. The plaque itself says preservation of the past and progress for the future. This farm, the Wilkins family used to have a flower farm on it. I want to preserve that history, preserve that past, and still continue to grow something there. My intention is organic vegetables, and hopefully increase the food accessibility in the area, and work with my neighbors and educate the people that want to be educated about what I do. And then the progress for the future is just to help build a proper community. I'm from a small town in East Texas, and I look forward to coming back to a wonderful community, and I've heard so many good things, and I just believe that I can be a vital part of that by having an urban farm here, and not development. I'm not putting any concrete on this property, but I will take any questions, and I can share my vision and all my drawings with you guys in the future.
do you have any structures on the property?
I'm sorry?
Would you have any structures on the property?
There are 3 sheds currently on the property, and the only other structure that will be on the property is one 100-foot by 40-foot greenhouse.
Would that be allowed? Since it's not in house form?
Yeah.
Unless
Yes.
it's in house form?
Well, it would be.
It would have to be in house form.
It would be an accessory to, if they combine this into one lot, it could be an accessory to the house that's there. So.
There's a house there now?
At 1910 there is, yes.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question. Well, welcome to the community. Welcome to Bastrop.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it.
This will be great. Are you opposed to going through a more formal process with the plan and going through the hoops, as they say? I mean, I think with some more definitive drawings showing what you're going to do?
Yeah, I should have brought it tonight. I am looking forward to doing anything to help out this community, and if that's educating them and showing them my vision, I'm more than welcome to go through a formal process. Since I just closed on the house on Halloween, this is really new to me.
Okay. Okay, great.
Any other questions? Thank you all for your time. I look forward to meeting all you.
Thank you.
Madam,
Does anyone else wish to be heard? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Is there any discussion from the commission?
Madam Chair, may I make
Yes,
some
ma'am.
comments? I think one of the things that is important to consider in this particular situation are the inherent developmental challenges that Jennifer mentioned. If anybody came in with a plan to do anything other than what is being proposed, the first hurdle they're going to encounter is our thoroughfare master plan. And you're going to have to build to a gridded network, or you're going to have to provide some kind of unique challenge as to why that couldn't happen. So it's going to have to be platted into one big lot, and it's going to then have to have drainage. So we're going to talk about drainage in a preliminary and final format, depending on how significant they want to build on this 2 acres.
It's pretty low, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
The property's pretty low, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am, I think. But the point is to get the density to be anything other than what it is, there are some very expensive challenges to overcome. And I do want Jennifer to either support me or argue differently, because I'm slightly winging this here, but the point is there's not accessibility for the large tract behind it. And you cannot develop because there isn't accessibility. And to plat it, it has to have accessibility, or we can't plat it. It has to have access to utilities. And so to take a 2-acre tract and put the kind of density that you could do with P4 house form on a larger scale, you've got to plat it so you can have accessibility. You've got to run quite a bit of infrastructure. So there's going to be a lot of hoops monetarily and physically that are going to prevent this from being anything other than what it is. So to urban farm this in its natural state is not going to require any of that, because as he said, all he's going to add is an accessory structure. So I'm not advocating for or against, but I'm saying if you choose to make it P4, it's not going to be all of that until an awful lot of work and expense goes through, and for a thoroughfare the thoroughfare plan to be changed, it has to come back to you. Because for us to waive the thoroughfare master plan, you have to recommend to council to deviate from the plan. And the only way our code allows for a deviation to occur is there has to be an environmentally sensitive known issue that prevents that. And then in that instance, we would do some kind of cluster development. Well, there aren't any environmental reasons to not put the thoroughfare master plan in. So I don't know if that helps your decision one way or the other, but this is the least aggressive use that we don't regulate to allow him to use his property in its current form, if that makes sense.
I have a question. Can anyone farm their land as a P3?
They could farm it for personal use, but the minute he wants a commercial application from it, that's what triggers the P4.
He can't harvest and put in his pickup truck and go sell it somewhere.
Well, I think it's the way he is framing it to do the tours and to bring people in and use it, changes it from, I just got a big old backyard garden that happens to take up 2 acres of my property.
Right. The only thing that he could not do is to have it open to the public and have the tours and whatever, but he could farm it and create produce and go and sell it elsewhere.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do we know that this is what the people on the north end would want? Is this something that we should consider without a plan? I mean, we just voted one down because we didn't know what the people on the north end wanted, and there was no plan and no vision. So I think this is a great idea, but are we being consistent if we disapprove one and approve another?
I think Linda's comments on it being so limited as far as what it could be used for makes a difference as to future use of it.
We're not regulating use.
I'm just saying the infrastructure that would happen would be restrictive.
I also think we've already broken consistency when we went from saying no to Tracy's to the sandwich shop. Again, I'm saying sandwich shop, I don't know what it's gonna be, but that's already been done, so.
But we said no to the sandwich shop. We said no to both of them.
Now, we voted down Tracy's, but we approved the...
No.
Yes, we did.
No.
It's 4 to them.
No, we voted down the lady that wants to have her,
No, it was 4 to 3.
it failed.
Should we have a read back of the vote?
No, it failed.
I counted 4 approval votes.
Who voted for approval? Will you read back the vote, please?
Yes, it was in favor of the motion was...
To deny. The motion to deny or approve?
No, it's motion to approve.
Was to approve?
It was Commissioner Lassen voted yes, Chair Moore voted yes, and Commissioner Sherry voted yes. It
To
failed
approve.
on a
approve.
motion of 4 to 3.
Right.
To approve. So we turned her down. How can we approve this, the same arguments?
And that's been my point. I think if we're in a kind of a bad position here, you know, that's why I was asking if you're willing to go through the process. There should be a better process, and you could easily just get frustrated with this next month and sell it. You know, that could happen. And someone with deeper pockets could come in and overcome those infrastructure issues. So I feel like we're wielding a really powerful weapon up here. I'd like to see the vision. For me, it's a little easier, the property on Austin Street, because you said it. You could walk in one block or another. That should have been P4 from the beginning. And I'm surprised that it wasn't, but that's a little easier to understand. Tracy's, for me, very easy. It's a unique, it's a one-off, but the neighborhood around it, we're up here to kind of, we faced a lot of problems, not problems, we faced a lot of opposition by a very organized neighborhood. And I know we don't have neighborhood associations I'm not aware of, but I really would like to get that neighborhood involved in everything you're saying. The neighborhood's there, you're gonna see them, they'll come out and you'll get a lot of buy-in. We want to have that buy-in too.
Very, very much agree.
Any other questions? Any other comments?
I mean, I go back, I think this is a wonderful idea, and I think that the likelihood of someone turning this into a bunch of condos or high-density housing is unlikely, although it is consistent with the neighborhood. We do have high density just to the west and north of this area. And so I don't necessarily think it's out of character for the area. The area already has it. But to the challenges of developing the site, if we leave it at P3, there's only one use that could possibly use for, and that's someone buys one of the adjacent parcels of land, puts a big house on it, and then, you know, someone very wealthy, you know, builds their tennis court in the backyard. I mean, that's really, it's a single family use on 2.5 acres that, I mean, that's what it's zoned for right now is, you know, if it's going to be make full use of that land. You know, P4 is the only way this could ever possibly be used realistically. And even trying to develop that as a small P3 neighborhood, the cost of putting a street in through there at $500 a linear foot is the minimum. You're not going to get the density of housing to make that road worth it. Nobody with deep pockets is going to build this at P3. It just doesn't exist. And so by not making it P4, not only are we denying this gentleman a very lovely and romantic use of the property, but that any property owner in the future, it's just, we're essentially saying you can't do anything with it other than maybe build a big tennis court and a swimming pool. And I just don't know many people that have the pockets to do that in that neighborhood or just in Bastrop.
Any other comment? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve as is.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Vivi, please call the roll.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Cheryl Lee,
Yes.
Cynthia Meyer,
Yes.
Matt Lassen,
Yes.
Debbie Moore,
Only on consistency, I vote no, sadly.
Pablo Serna,
No.
Glenn Johnson,
No.
Greg Sherry.
No.
What?
Motion fails. Do you have the same count that I do, Ms. Umble? Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our public hearings. We'll move on to item 4, updates. Item 4A, update on recent city council actions regarding planning department items.
Madam Chair, I am very proud to announce that council adopted the B3 code at their last meeting and all of the accoutrements that go with it.
Believe it or not.
That's amen to that. They also approved the first of 2 readings of the I-Code series. And at your last planning and zoning meeting, you approved or recommended for approval the Bastrop Grove subdivision. Mayor and council heard that case and voted to approve the first reading of that ordinance, and it should, well, it will be on the November 26th consent agenda for their final and second reading. Other than that, that is all I think that has gone to council recently that has P&Z involvement. And y'all have met Jared Mayfield, who I am delighted to say is our new Director of Planning and Development, and will be in charge of your December meeting. So this is when I bow out and go back to being just the city manager. So thank y'all very much.
Thank you. Individual requests from Planning and Zoning Commission, item 4B. Individual requests from Planning and Zoning Commissioners that particular items be listed on future agendas. I'd like to start going into the comp plan sometime next year.
Yes, ma'am. In January and February, we will be bringing back to you the future land use piece of the comp plan, because y'all will need to address that so that it is in concert with the B3 codes. And so as soon as Jared can get his feet wet, we've talked internally with staff, we'll be bringing that back to you. And so we've heard you.
Getting feet wet, I mean, that's kind of open-ended there. You're going to get wet quick, right?
Well, in his interview, he said he didn't want to be bored, and we had laughed hysterically, and he wasn't quite sure why we thought that was funny. I'll pray for the day we're bored. But the bottom line is that you will get back into the comp plan very quickly, and it will be in the context of the future land use plan so that we can make sure that those are in concert, and then from there you'll just pick up.
Do you anticipate any more requests for consideration for zoning changes like we had this?
If they do, they'll have to pay for it. Council left the window open until October 8th. Okay. So all of the requests that you got met that deadline. So if you do, it will be because they paid to hear it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Anybody else?
I would like, and I won't, since I'm new, we may have discussed this in the past, just to review what information can be given to the public about what we do. I mean, we public. I mean, we publish in the newspaper. I don't know how many people take the newspaper, and we send out mail, and I don't know how many people drop anything that's not anyway, I just would like to review what we can do in addition to the requirements of law to advise people about what's going on in their neighborhood.
So let me ask some questions to make sure that I'm understanding your request. Are you looking at the state law requirements, or you're over and above to get better participation? And if so, in what instances? On particular zoning cases or visioning, just so that we know what to bring back?
Well, I'm not talking about what the state law required. We'll have to do that, but what else could be done without a huge expense to the city to deal with all those issues, I think, of what's, people I think don't respond, and maybe there's nothing we can do about that, but I'd like to examine that, or at least discuss it.
May I ask one, I'm sorry, one question is kind of backing up. Linda, when we talk about the fees now, what are the fees, the initial, to reconsider the place type?
I don't have those off the top of my head. I'll ask Viviana to send those to you. And I don't have them off the top of my head. I will tell you that the fee for planned development on a large scale is expensive, and that is by design. Council talked about that and felt like that we had spent a considerable amount of time and energy and the public's money to be clear on what we wanted. And we did that to make it easy. And if you want to deviate from that, it needs to be expensive because we've told you what we want. But outside of just the one-offs, I don't know what they are, but Vivi will send that to you tomorrow.
Absolutely.
I'll just share my experience on rezoning. You really need to be behind it because it does cost money. And I think that's why I feel that we're wielding a really big weapon here, just upzoning something that's maybe against the vision that the city planners have for Bastrop. I mean, everything I went through said we didn't want to do spot zoning and like that. And if it was there already, well, we wanted to protect that like Tracy's. But I feel like, I don't know. I guess we're saying no right now, but if they come back and they can present a really good and compelling case, that's great. I think they're going to get that what they're. I just feel like just doing it without even seeing something. I'm not trying to regulate use, like you said, but I'm trying to think of the worst case scenario.
And I agree
there's
with
always the
what
worst
you said,
case
Pablo.
Anything else? All right, moving on to item, what is it? 5. Is there a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Chair.
Thank you, everybody.